Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm a former Boeing 737 pilot and a member of the PMDG 737 tech team. In today's video we are going to fly a visual approach into Gran Canaria, and I want to show you how we can do this pretty much completely with the FMS. So this is pretty much exactly the way that the visual approach SOP used to work at my old airline. So let's get right into this one. We're going to start with a little bit of theory here. So we are arriving from Ineta and we have programmed the ILS Zulu approach runway 03 left for Gran Canaria. Now all of that is programmed, but since the weather is good and since we do have the field on site just over there, we can tell ATC that we're able to do a visual approach. We are already a little bit late anyway today, so shoving off a little bit of time is definitely not going to be wrong. Now, how exactly are we going to do that? So, let me show you. The first thing that we have to do is to actually prepare ourselves to come in on a decent vertical profile, and I've already done this. Now, how? Let me show you. So, the first thing is that we create a custom waypoint that's at a set distance from the runway, and my old operator wanted us to be wings level latest by 4 miles on the final. So in order to achieve that and to be wings level at 4 miles, I create a custom waypoint 5 miles on the extended center line. You can do this by copying the runway waypoint and then you put /-5 in there, put that up here, and then it's going to create that waypoint. In our case, that's the Romeo Whiskey 001 point that has been created down here. The next step is to see what crossing altitude it calculates. Then we make that one hard, aka we copy it and then insert it as a fixed restriction. Then take any sensible waypoint. For example, let's say looking at the map, from Cocteau we may want to fly direct to the base. So what you do is you take the runway point that you've just created and you put that behind Cocteau. Do not execute this, repeat, not execute this, and now the FMC is going to calculate a crossing altitude. Copy that one, then erase the change that you've just done, and then we can paste that one to make this crossing altitude hard. Execute this, and now we're getting a VNAV profile that is perfectly designed for that approach. So let's activate VNAV, let's already continue our descent over here and say that ATC clears us down towards 3,000 feet. And that's pretty much everything we need to do to prepare for the visual approach. Next we are going to execute it. So let's assume that we now have the runway inside, we're able to keep it inside, and now ATC actually clears us to fly the visual approach. What we're going to do depends a little bit on where we are. So you can either just fly direct to the waypoint that you have created, but if that creates too much of an angle, I would recommend to create a 4-mile base point. The way we can do this is we go down here, we take the runway 001 point, we can see the final approach track is 025, we add 90 degrees, that makes 115, like that, and then we type /4, and that way we've just created a 4-mile base point for this approach. Let's join the two up, and now that ATC has cleared us for the arrival, we can take that one, paste it in here, press execute, and that way we're now flying towards the 4-mile base. If you're already further than the beam position from that final point, we can also just fly direct to the final point like I'm doing over here. Now, that creates pretty much everything we need, so we got the VNAV path and we got everything set up for the arrival. The next thing for us to do is simply to commence the approach, and since we are now cleared for the approach, we are technically flying completely with visual references to the terrain. That means we can set our MCP altitude down to airfield elevation plus 1000, and that way we are pretty much going to fly directly onto the final completely with FMC guidance. Now make sure that you are on a good vertical profile here, so that means both the speed as well as the altitude. For this reason I've just pulled the speed brakes because we were 20 knots fast over here, which we are now reducing towards our target speed. Now, it used to be an SOP at my old airline that we had to use LNAV and VNAV to fly this complete thing into the final approach. So we're basically flying this the same way that you would fly an RNAV approach. However, in many other airlines, this is not required, and there is a completely separate method on how you can possibly fly a visual approach without having to rely so much on your aircraft's automation. But we are going to talk about that one in a separate dedicated video. This one is going to be focused on the LNAV and VNAV technique, which is also going to help a lot of flight simmers with their approaches, since they can learn from what the FMC predicts. And that's often worth more than any just showing stuff by videos, because it simply shows you how these things work. Now, one important factor when you fly a visual approach like this is that you have to coordinate the missed approach that you're going to fly with air traffic control. So remember, we created this approach based on an instrument approach that was already loaded in the FMC. Therefore, we do have the missed approach maneuver of that same instrument approach in our FMC. So if you've got an airplane that has an automatic LNAV on go-around feature installed, then you got to be rather careful there, because that airplane might follow a missed approach that ATC does not expect you to fly. Now, as we're turning final, let's go gear down and flaps 15. And then we can match that speed down here, complete the landing checklist, like that. So that's gonna be engine start switches continuous, recall checked, speed brake on, green light, landing gear down 3 green, auto brake 3, and then we can set flaps 30 and set VRF plus 5 over here, like that. Alright, cool. Then we got flaps 30 and the green light, and the landing lights are on. Landing checklist completed, the crew is seated, and we're clear to land. Well, and as you can see, the FMC brings you into a perfect final here. So let's set that missed approach altitude 3000 for our case, and then we can continue that approach. So recycle flight directors. Why does that still put my autopilot on? Okay, here we go. Recycle flight directors, and with that we're perfectly established. You can see that I have tuned the ILS as a backup over here for the visual approach. Never hurts to do that if you've got something like that present at the runway that you're approaching. Otherwise, you can always use LNAV and VNAV data from the FMC to help you with an approach like this as well. Alright, so finally you heard a minimum call. Obviously that one is not really applicable for the minimum itself, because we are visual through the entire maneuver. We are legally required to be, but it is a good idea to set the minimums to 500 feet above the runway threshold, because that is the latest point edge which you should be completely established on the final approach. Well, and with that, have fun and enjoy landing your airplane. And that's all there is to it.
30, 20, 10.
So, speed brake up, thruster is normal, and we got 80%. And with that, welcome to Gran Canaria after a whopping 4 hours and 57 minutes flight time. I do hope you liked this one. Be sure to leave your feedback in the comments underneath the video. As always, like, comment and subscribe, and if you really love what I'm doing on this channel, I would appreciate a small donation through the Buy Me Coffee link in the video description below. Thank you very much for watching, and I'm looking forward to see you all again on the next one.